So this is anatomy assignment 3, the cardiovascular system. So we start off with blood vessels. In order for blood to make its way around the body, blood is carried through 5 different types of blood vessels, which are the arteries, arterioles, capillaries, venules and veins. So we start with arteries and arterioles. So arteries. These are the large blood vessels that leave the heart. They have thick, muscular walls which contract and relax to send blood to all parts of the body. The main artery leaving the heart is the aorta, and it quickly splits up into smaller vessels which are called the arterioles. Arterioles are little arteries, so artery walls contain elastic cartilage and smooth muscle. This flexible wall allows the vessels to expand and contract, which helps to push the blood along the length of the arteries. This action is called peristalsis and is how smooth muscles contract. Arteries do not contain any valves as they are not required, and they predominantly carry oxygenated blood. The exception to this is the pulmonary artery, which carries the oxygenated blood away from the heart. So what we need to know is arteries carry blood away from the heart. They have thick muscular walls. Arteries carry predominantly oxygenated blood, and arterioles are the small branches of arteries. Arteries also have narrow lumens, which contributes to the higher amount of pressure because a lot of blood is trying to get through a small spaced artery, which therefore increases the force at which the walls are being struck and therefore increases the pressure, which is why the walls need to be thicker. This makes the artery very strong. Arterioles connect the arteries to the capillaries, which allows gases to diffuse in and out so we can oxygenate blood. These consist of smooth muscle which controls the blood flow as it is running more smoothly, and it also supports diffusion. Next is capillaries. So once the arteries and arterioles have divided, they will eventually feed blood into the smallest blood vessels called capillaries. These are found in all parts of the body, especially the muscles, and are so tiny that their walls are only 1 cell thick. There are tiny spaces within these cell walls which allow oxygen and other nutrients to pass through, which is a process called diffusion. The blood flows very slowly through the capillaries to allow for this process. In the capillaries, the blood will also pick up the waste products of metabolism, carbon dioxide and lactic acid. There are more capillaries than any other type of blood vessel in the body. So, the main things we need to know about capillaries are that they are tiny blood vessels which are only 1 cell thick. There's small spaces in the thin walls of capillaries which allows diffusion to occur. Oxygen and nutrients will diffuse into the cells, and carbon dioxide and lactic acid will flow from the cells into the capillaries. So, now we move on to veins and venules. So, the capillaries will eventually feed back into larger blood vessels called venules, which are the smallest veins, and they eventually become veins. The walls of these veins are thinner and less muscular than arteries, and they carry blood back to the heart. They also contain smooth muscle and contract to send the blood back to the heart. The veins are generally acting against gravity, so they contain non-return valves to prevent the blood flowing back once the smooth muscle has relaxed. These valves prevent the pooling of blood in the lower limbs. Veins predominantly carry deoxygenated blood, with the exception of the pulmonary vein, which carries oxygenated blood to the heart from the lungs. So, veins always take blood towards the heart. They have thin muscular walls. Veins have non-return valves to prevent backflow. Veins predominantly carry deoxygenated blood, and venules are small branches which feed into veins. The cardiovascular system. The cells of the body need a steady and constant supply of oxygen. Blood is responsible for carrying and delivering oxygen to all the body's cells, and this blood is pumped around the body and to the lungs by the heart. The left side of your heart pumps the oxygenated blood to the cells of the muscles, brain, kidneys, liver, and all the other organs. The cells then take the oxygen out of the blood and use it to produce energy. This is called metabolism, and it produces waste products such as carbon dioxide. The deoxygenated blood then continues its journey back to the heart, enters the right-hand side, and is pumped out of the right ventricle to the lungs. At the lungs, the blood becomes oxygenated, and the waste product, carbon dioxide, is unloaded and breathed out. Blood is carried to transport nutrients and oxygen to the cells of the body. Among other things, blood will transport oxygen, glucose, proteins, fats, vitamins, hormones, enzymes, platelets, carbon dioxide and electrolytes. Blood is made up of 4 components: red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets and plasma. Blood is a thick, gloopy substance because it carries a high concentration of solids. It's made up of 55% plasma and 45% solids, which is a very high concentration. Red blood cells. So 99% of the blood cells in the body are red blood cells. They are red in colour because of the presence of hemoglobin, which is red in colour. Hemoglobin has a massive attraction for oxygen, and this is why the main function of red blood cells is to transport oxygen to the cells. There are around 5 million red blood cells for every 1 mm³ volume of blood. On the other hand, white blood cells are colourless or transparent and are far fewer in number. There's approximately 1 white blood cell for every 700 red blood cells. The role of the white blood cell is to fight infection, as they are part of the body's immune system. They destroy bacteria and other dangerous organisms and therefore remove disease away from the body. Platelets. Platelets are not full cells but are part of cells. They act by stopping blood loss through clotting. They become sticky when in contact with the air to form the initial stage of repair to damaged tissue. Platelets also need a substance called factor VIII to enable them to clot. A haemophiliac person is someone whose blood doesn't clot correctly. This is not because they are short of platelets, but it's because they are short of factor VIII. And finally, plasma. Plasma is the liquid part of the blood, which is straw-coloured in appearance. It is the solution in which all the solids are carried. Next we have the cardiac cycle. So the sinoatrial node is the pacemaker as it transports electrical impulses, causing the cardiac muscle to contract like a wave. This occurs in the right atrium and it contracts the atria. The atrioventricular node, it uses the impulse from the sinoatrial node as it makes a connection. This is again located in the right atrium and it sends an impulse via the nerve network of the ventricle. These ventricles then contract. The atrioventricular bundle is a bundle of branches that send electrical impulses from the atrioventricular node to the ventricles. There are both a left and right branch, and it allows the impulse to exit the atria and then enter the ventricles. Purkinje fibre is located below the endocardium and they conduct electrical stimulus to allow the ventricles to contract smoothly and in a rhythm. There are 2 parts to the nervous system, which are the sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves. So firstly, the sympathetic nerve increases the heart rate, where we release a chemical, epinephrine, which is the cause. This usually happens as a result of physical activity causing physical stress or emotional stress, which is through anxiety. The parasympathetic nerve does the opposite, where it decreases the speed of our heart rate. This is due to acetylcholine, which causes a reduction in heartbeat speed. This occurs once the stressor has passed on. So to finish off, I'm going to label the heart and explain what each part of the heart's function is. So firstly we've got the left atrium. The left atrium's job is to collect oxygenated blood from the lungs, which then contracts to push the blood through the bicuspid valve and through to the left ventricle. The left atrium is situated here. Next we've got the superior vena cava, and this one's job is to deliver the deoxygenated blood back to the heart from the upper body. Next is the left ventricle, and this is where the left ventricle's wall is a lot thicker than the right ventricle wall because it has to pump the blood to the whole body rather than just the lungs, and it therefore receives the blood under a higher pressure. And the left ventricle is here. Next we've got the bicuspid valve, and this one's job is to stop the blood from backflowing back into the left atrium, and it therefore allows it to go through into the left ventricle. Next is the right atrium, and this collects the deoxygenated blood from the body, then contracts, which pushes the blood through to the right ventricle via the tricuspid valve. Next is a pulmonary artery, and this one's job is to deliver the deoxygenated blood back to the lungs, and the pulmonary artery is this one here. Next is an aorta, and this delivers oxygenated blood to the body. Next is a pulmonary vein, and this delivers oxygenated blood to the heart. Next is the inferior vena cava, which delivers deoxygenated blood back to the heart from the lower body. Next is a pulmonary valve, and this stops the backflow into the right ventricle and allows the oxygenated blood to go through to the lungs. Next is the right ventricle, and the right ventricle collects the oxygenated blood and pumps it to the lungs. Next is a septum. The septum keeps blood from the right and left side separated and stops the blood from mixing. This is important because the blood in the left ventricle is loaded with oxygen for the rest of the body to use. Next is the aortic valve, and the job of this is to stop the backflow of blood into the left ventricle so it can therefore be pumped to the body. Chordae tendineae, which are a small group of tough strands in the heart. They are commonly referred to as the heartstrings since they resemble small pieces of string. It plays a vital role in holding the atrioventricular valves in place while the heart is pumping blood. And finally we've got a tricuspid valve. The tricuspid valve stops the blood from backflowing into the right atrium, allowing it to travel into the right ventricle. And finally, the heart includes the pericardium, which is the outer layer, therefore is used to keep the shape of the heart and defend it. It is also used to cut down on the amount of friction. This allows our blood to be pumped around smoothly and it is able to flow. Next is the myocardium, which is the middle layer of the heart, where it is the largest layer out of the three, and is used in the electrical impulses of a heartbeat. This is in control when sending electrical impulses around our body. And finally we've got the endocardium, which is the layer on the inside, which is vital as it stops the friction between the heart muscle and flowing blood, which allows the blood to be transported more quickly.